Sometimes silence says more than words ever could. But what happens when someone who has lived in silence for years finally chooses to speak? Not a speech, not a story, just one sentence. And that sentence changes everything. There was a boy named Michael. Born in a small town in the Midwest, he grew up different. He wasn't born without a voice. But after tragedy struck at the age of 10, when he lost his father in a car accident and watched his mother drown in grief, Michael stopped talking. At first, everyone thought it was temporary, a phase, shock, but weeks turned into months. Months turned into years, and Michael remained silent. He wasn't mute. Doctors confirmed that. He just chose silence. At school, the kids whispered, "Weirdo, does he even understand us? Why doesn't he say anything?" Teachers tried to push him, but eventually gave up. He became the boy in the back of the classroom, always listening, never speaking. And yet, behind those quiet eyes was a storm no one saw. Silence became Michael's shield, but also his prison. In high school, when others laughed, joked, and lived loudly, Michael lived in shadows. He walked the hallways with his head down, hands shoved deep in his pockets, as though trying to disappear. Some teachers admired his drawings. Some noticed he always helped clean up after class. But for most, he was invisible. Until one day, it was senior year. The school held its annual assembly, a tradition where one student would step up to share something meaningful with the graduating class. This year, the student body voted, and somehow, someway, they voted for him. Michael, the silent one. When the announcement came, laughter filled the gym. "No way! He doesn't even talk. This is a joke." Michael sat still, his face expressionless. But inside, his heart pounded. For days leading up to the event, people speculated. Would he even show up? Would he stand there and say nothing? Would he walk away? The truth? Even Michael didn't know. The day of the assembly arrived. The gym was packed. Parents, teachers, students. Michael's name was called. Slowly, he stood. Step by step, he walked toward the stage. The crowd buzzed with whispers and laughter. Some were curious. Some were cruel. Most were waiting for him to fail. He reached the microphone. For a long moment, he just stood there, silent. The room fell quiet. And then, for the first time in years, Michael opened his mouth, and he spoke one sentence. "Don't judge the quiet ones. We're the ones who hear everything." The words hung in the air like electricity. The gym, once restless, was still. His voice was calm, steady, but filled with a weight that pierced everyone's chest. And in that moment, his silence became his greatest strength. Because while others had been busy talking, laughing, mocking, Michael had been watching, listening, learning. That one sentence, just 12 words, carried more power than 1,000 speeches. Michael never became the loudest in the room, but he didn't need to be. That one moment, that one sentence, became the foundation of his life. He went on to become a writer, speaker, and mentor, not because he loved talking, but because he understood the value of words. And maybe that's the lesson for us. In a world full of noise, don't underestimate the power of silence. Don't underestimate the ones who say little. They might have the most to say. And if you've been silent for too long, not because you can't speak, but because you've been afraid to, remember Michael. Sometimes, one sentence is all it takes. So maybe right now you've been living in silence. Not because you don't have something to say, but because the world hasn't made space to hear it. But remember Michael. One moment, one sentence. That's all it takes to change everything. Drop a comment below and share the sentence you would say if the whole world was finally listening. I read every single one. And if this story touched you, hit that subscribe button, because every day, I'll share more stories that remind you. Your silence does not define you. Your voice does.